Welcome to the NBCPA Black History Month podcast series. We are delighted to be joined today by Patrick Vernon OBE. Patrick is an independent advisor on equality, diversity and inclusion for the Crown Prosecution Service. Patrick led the campaign for National Windrush Day since 2010 and in 2018 kickstarted the campaign for an amnesty for the Windrush generation in response to the Windrush scandal. Patrick was awarded an OBE in 2012 for his work on tackling health inequalities in ethnic minority communities, and in 2018 he received an honorary PhD from Wolverhampton University. In 2019, he was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award for campaigning and advocacy work by the SMK Foundation. In August 2021, Patrick was appointed by Wolverhampton University as Honorary Professor of Cultural Heritage and Community Leadership for the Department of Community Development. In 2020, Patrick was selected by British Vogue as one of the Britain's top 20 campaigners and was included in the 2020 Power List of 100 influential Black people in Britain. And in 2020, Patrick co-authored 100 Great Black Britons and established the Manjonzi Fund. We are so delighted to be joined by Patrick today. Patrick, thank you so much for giving up your time today. And our first question, what does Black History Month mean to you?
It's interesting. I think that question, I receive that question all the time, when I do my various talks. It's still important. I mean, I know a lot of people think that it's a month and, why is it a month? We should have it all the year round. Manly Blackman was interviewed recently saying that Black History Month should be taught throughout the whole year, and I absolutely agree with her. But actually, there are particular significance why we still need to have Black History Month. If you look at the history of Black History Month, as it was started in America in 1926, it was called Negro History Week. And it was a clear reminder of the racial violence experienced by African-American community during the time of segregation in America. There were regular lynchings. There was segregation of separate development, which meant that Blacks weren't allowed to share the same universities, hospitals, banks, a whole range of facilities. And that's why Black History Month was established, to promote racial pride. When we adopted it here in the UK in the 1980s, it's for the same reasons. There's a high degree of discrimination affecting the Black community in terms of mass unemployment, stop and search, you name it. There are lots of things happening within the Black community. And it was no coincidence that between 1979 to 1985, we had uprisings or riots, depending on how you would see it politically, in St. Paul's, in Bristol, Brixton, a riot across the country, Toxteth, and then obviously what happened on Broadwater Farm as well. And I think Black History Month is still relevant in 2022 for these main reasons. It's about promoting Black British culture and Black British history, reminding everyone that Black history is part of British history. Secondly, it's about educating and forming Black, white, brown, and children for the future, so they can be better decision makers and informers. It's quite interesting. As you're interviewing me today, we have the news of the first Southeast Asian Prime Minister, first person of colour as Prime Minister. But he's not the first person, by the way, to Rishi's not the very first person to run Britain. You have to go far back as AD 280. Septimus Severus, a Black Roman emperor, was the equivalent of the prime minister back in the day then. So Rishi is the second person of colour to run Britain. First person was Septimus Severus. That is why we need to have these facts and figures in front of us to be educated and informed. And the third reason why I think Black History Month is important, and it ties into the work I am doing at CPS, it's part of that wider inclusion agenda, that the narrative of Britain is changing. Britain has to fit with the times. Black history has inspired other history months, such as LGBT History Month, Bengali History Week, Disability History Month, Gypsy Traveller History Month, and in the last 2 years, there's been establishment of Southeast Asian History Month, and this year there's a campaign which I'm supporting for East Asian History Month. And the reason why everyone's saying, what about our history, is because if you look at the narrative of Britain, so if you jump on a plane, you're flying from anywhere in the world, and you're flying on a British Airway flight, whether it's club class, first class, or standard, and you read the in-flight magazine as you arrive into Heathrow or Gatwick or wherever, you will still get the impression of Britain is like a cross between EastEnders and Bridesheads Revisited. Very narrow, myopic view of Britain. And you know, and I know, and your members know that Britain is changing. We've got a Prime Minister, Rishi. We've got more and more people in senior roles. I mean, that doesn't guarantee representation of a person of colour means that there'll be more inclusion and more equality of justice. We know that from previous leaders and previous ministers of state. But it's a marker, and that is why Black History Month is still important. It's about that agenda around inclusion and representation.
Brilliant. And the importance of knowing our facts and figures and history is so important, and I couldn't agree more. And thinking about that, our theme this year for Black History Month is time for change, action, not words. What does this look like for you as a person of color?
For me, and as you read my bio, and that only touches half the stuff I actually do currently. So I've always been an action pragmatic person, trying to fight for racial equality, racial justice, promoting all aspects of intersectionality. So I think time for the theme for this year's Black History Month is a challenge for all of us. I think it's about our ongoing learning and development around understanding different lived experiences, as well as our own lived experiences, so we can make better decisions. We are more informed about stuff. So if we see an injustice in the workplace where someone's been affected by a particular protected characteristic, we can call it out and say, zero tolerance. It's not acceptable. Secondly, time for action is about, as you know, when the murder of George Floyd happened 2 years ago, a lot of organisations up in corporates, the public sector, civil service, big charities made these pledges that they cared about black people, they were going to be anti-racist, and they were going to try and do the right thing. How many of those pledges have followed through in the last 2.5 years? We want action, not words. We've had too many words, too many promises, too many diktats, too many pledges, too many apologies. Well, not had an apology around slavery, that's not an issue. But if you look at my experience through the Windrush scandal, the government has apologized. I've lost how many times the government has apologized for its hand in the Windrush scandal. But that's not translated into action, helping those people on the ground in receiving compensation in a proper, just and timely way. So I think action for all organisations and for the CPS, it's doing great work around EDI. It's got much work to do still on EDI, and we will bear witness how the promises are converted into actions. But also we have to take responsibility ourselves in terms of our own actions, or what we're going to do. We can't wait for people to do things for us. If you look at the history of civil rights in Britain, as well as in America and other parts of the world, it's people power. It's about people working together, coming together. So your network and other networks have that same values. You're activists, whether you like it or not. You are advancing better inclusion in the workplace. So my challenge to all of you: let's do it better. Let's be consistent about it, and let's bring people on board who are allies to support the cause.
Absolutely. We are all activists. We all have a responsibility to call out injustices that we see within the workplace or further afield. And we need to understand our lived experience as well. And thinking about EDI that you just mentioned there, as the Crown Prosecution Service's first independent advisor for equality, diversity and inclusion, can you tell us a little bit more about your role and what more you think the CPS can do to make ourselves a more inclusive organisation?
Sure, the role is still evolving, to be quite honest. I'm getting the feel of all aspects of CPS in terms of your regions, in terms of your specialisms and functionality, and also as well as get to know all the various networks that support staff within the organisation. And so I think I'm just getting the feel of things, and I'll be in a position to say to senior management, I'll be having meetings over the next couple of months with all senior directors, just to get understanding where they're at, and then hopefully I'll be in a position to say what stuff that we need to do for the organisation to go to the next level. I think, if you look across civil service departments and other parts of arm's length agencies, CPS is quite unique because there aren't that many organisations within the public sector that has a lot of staff network still, like you have, and that still has a strategy which is still ongoing. But the challenge is about how to keep that going in a very difficult political environment where anything around equality, diversity, inclusion is perceived as a luxury, perceived as an add-on, and also perceived as unnecessary. You know, and I know that is not true. It's essential. It's critical. It's important. The business world understands this very clearly. If you look at the organisation that's leading the way, ironically, around EDI, it's in the private sector. It's not the public sector anymore. Financial services companies, tech companies, even pharmaceutical companies, believe it or not, are actually leading the way. And the reason why they're doing this is they've done their sums. They understand the business case, the legal case, the moral case, and their clients and customers, etc., around their demographics. And that's why they probably invest more resources, maybe compared to CPS and other parts of governments, because maybe they have more money anyway. Let's face it. But secondly, they actually know that this will bring greater financial returns in share capital, revenue, around investing in talent, and investing in the customer base. So we still have to do that work. We still have to convince government that there is a business case, a moral case, a legal case around EDI, and it's important that CPS should also be at the forefront of saying we believe that equality, diversity, and inclusion is important. We're going to take this work to the next level. I hope to contribute in their thinking of CPS so it takes that work to the next level. We can't be coasting anymore. We can't go backwards anymore. Listen, we've got a Prime Minister of colour, so we've got no excuse. And we need to also educate and inform the Prime Minister that EDI is at the heart of government too.
Absolutely. I mean, EDI is essential for any business, and I completely support the notion that the CPS should be leading the way in this. Patrick, we've heard at the start a little bit about your history and about your wonderful achievements, but what we really want to know is, can you tell us about your proudest achievement?
I'm proud of God. I'm lucky. I've been lucky and blessed to have been successful in all the stuff that I've done. Not working in senior management, charities, the NHS, or civil service, as well as being a campaigner and activist at the same time, an author. So it's difficult to think of that. But I think there's lots of proud moments, and you might think I was receiving my OBE with my parents. Actually, that was important. But what was more important was a few years earlier, I'd worked at NHS for a number of years as senior director, and I was involved in a major regeneration programme in North London, in Wembley, of a massive housing estate. And I worked with the local residents there around their vision to have an all-purpose built health care centre, which would have GP surgeries, which would have facilities for community meetings and events. And I was involved in that. And when I left the NHS and I left that part of London, they actually invited me to the actual opening ceremony of the building. It's on a chalk estate, not far from Wembley Stadium. And they invited me to the opening of the building with the then mayor of the council, in Brent Council, and they named the main hall in the building after me. They called it the Vernon Hall, and I was really touched by that. And I said, hold on. Normally, when you have a name after a building or a hall or something, you normally have to be dead. I'm still alive. I had to touch myself. But they actually did that because they recognised that I went over and above my job, and I believed in the community and I supported the community for their vision. So I felt really touched and honoured by that, and I get goose pimples when I go there. I've not been there recently, but I get goose pimples when I go to that building and see Vernon Hall, knowing that people believed in me and I believed in them.
Brilliant. And that's just a reminder for us that the responsibilities we have for our communities and the difference we can make by going above and beyond. And that's really great to hear, especially for me, Patrick. That's really inspirational. I can completely understand why you'd feel touched, but I'm very touched just hearing that story. So thank you for sharing that. So thinking about your career and thinking about all your achievements and Black History Month, we want to know a little bit more about, I guess, what makes you tick and what motivates you. And what we'd really love to know is, Patrick, simply who inspires you?
Okay, so as you all know, I was involved in the whole stuff around Windrush, campaigning for National Windrush Day, which acknowledged that history of the Windrush generation that came to Britain, who were invited by the Nationality Act 1948 to contribute to Britain. Not just, and when I talk about Windrush generation, of course I'm talking about Caribbean people, but actually I acknowledge that people came from Africa and people came from all parts of the world, particularly Southeast Asia, and all parts of that moment in time in migration history. So actually my parents are quite important to me. Both of them are still alive. My dad's 91, my mum's in the 80s. They live in the Midlands in Wolverhampton, and I know I've been influenced. I've had fantastic colleagues, Black, white, Asian people over the years. But to answer your question, it has to be my parents. They inspire me, my siblings, the grandchildren, and the great grandchildren. 4 generations. They're still there, and we're lucky because we all know that we lost lots of our elders either through natural, morbidity, mortality, and that was further intensified during the last couple of years because of COVID-19. But they're still there, and I give praise to them, acknowledge them, and they're a source of inspiration. So definitely my parents.
Patrick, and I'm sure your parents are extremely proud of your achievements, and you are testament to your parents for what you achieved and what you will continue to achieve within your new role and further afield. Patrick, we're so grateful for your time today, and thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this Black History Month podcast. Thank you.
No problem at all. And everyone, action, not words. Let's make it count.